And joining us right now is a medical doctor himself, Senator Rand Paul. Senator, were you in the meeting with the other senators when you got the word? And what was your first thought?
You know, Senator McCain and I have had a long and storied history. We've tangled quite a bit, but, you know, my sympathy and prayer go out to him in this time of crisis. And the only thing I would try to say encouraging is, well, you know, obviously the diagnosis is not great. I have met people who've lived years and years with glioblastoma. It's not a good diagnosis. But I have met, and there are exceptions to every rule, and I hope Senator McCain will be an exception to that rule.
Absolutely. Of course, now I know we all want him back on the job. He would like to come back, Senator, as quickly as possible. But there's another big story, and that is for the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about what are you guys going to do about health care? So people are going, when's he going to be able to come back? Will we be able to count on him as a vote? I understand the President of the United States called you last night. How'd that phone call go?
You know, the President and I think, have a good rapport. He understands where I am, that I am really probably the most adamant that we should repeal Obamacare. And I gave him some options, and I've also given the Senate leadership some options. One of the things I object to on the bill, there is some good in the bill, but what I object to is there's an enormous insurance bailout fund. I've told them if they will take that insurance bailout money and put it on a separate bill that is likely to pass, they can probably get what they want. And conservatives wouldn't be forced to vote for something that we philosophically think the federal government shouldn't be involved with.
So if you took the $200 billion, what they did is offer tax credits for people to buy insurance plans, and it's up to maybe $200 billion. Is that $200 billion, right? So,
well, you know,
and you want that moved out, but you know that if you move that out, moderates will say, how can I justify voting for this?
Well, the thing is, you could move both bills on the same day. So, for example, there's a Medicaid bill, the S-chip bill, that moves every year. Democrats vote unanimously for it. You could move that bill either just prior to the Obamacare repeal bill, same day, same time, just after, but basically simultaneously. And then they would see that they're getting their money, and conservatives would see that we're doing what we promised, which was repeal. See, we didn't promise as conservatives to vote for an insurance bailout fund. In fact, most of us are philosophically opposed to the government giving money to an industry that has doubled their profits under Obamacare. They went from $6 billion a year to $15 billion a year.
But they hate it and they're dropping out. They hate it and they're dropping out of the exchanges.
Well, here's what they're doing. They're whining, and they want more taxpayer money. And so they're more than willing to stay if we subsidize them. These are the richest corporations in America. Why would taxpayers have to subsidize rich corporations?
Senator, we had you on when you and Senator Mike Lee were the two that said you didn't like the repeal and replace bill. Then they took your advice and they said, you know what, we're just going to repeal. And then yesterday, the day before, we were talking about the 4 holdouts on that plan. That was yesterday. So when is this? What can we expect? The Republicans or the American people just want to see something done. We keep hearing from this person who has a different plan, this person who has a different plan. They just want you all to come together. Is that going to be possible?
And at this point, it is a bit confusing because yesterday I announced that I would vote to go to the bill because the Senate leadership said it was going to be the 2015 clean repeal bill. So I am in favor of that. I'm on the team to repeal. I'm just not on the team to keep the insurance bailout. So we have to decide what we're going to. Yesterday, Senate leadership sort of equivocated, so I'm not sure. Are they going to the 2015 repeal bill, or are they going to the insurance bailout bill?
It's a waste of time.
So it makes a big difference.
But, Senator, it's a waste of time to do the repeal bill because you know these are your colleagues, these are your friends, and they're Republicans. They're not going to vote for it.
Yeah, I don't agree with you. What I would say is that there is a variation of the 2015 repeal, and I have talked with the 3 or 4 people who are saying they won't vote for the clean repeal bill anymore, and I've offered to them something that I think would be a combination of the new bill and the repeal bill put together. And I think we could actually please all parties if we did that. And I continue to work for a solution.
Sure. What does that combination look like?
I want to get it done.
What is that combination? Yeah.
One of the things that people that no longer want to vote for the 2015 repeal bill are worried about is that Medicaid goes away in 2 years, the Medicaid expansion. However, it doesn't do anything to underlying Medicaid, so it doesn't reduce the cost there, and some of them are worried about that. But I have offered that in the BRCA, the Senate leadership bill, there's a 7-year relaxing window where the Medicaid expansion gradually doesn't go away but gets paid for by the states over a 7-year period. I've said, well, we could put that on the clean repeal, and I would accept that as a compromise. And I think some of them are thinking about it.
Sure.
All right. So we have Ted Cruz says, this is my amendment. You put that in. I'm in. Mike Lee just told Steve that he's got something out there, this dual.
The Consumer Freedom Amendment, where there are dual risk pools, not a single risk pool. And if that is accomplished, he would be a yes.
Would that help you?
Well, what I've told the president is I have one ask also, and my ask is that we separate the pork from the repeal. If you put the pork on another bill that Democrats love spending, so get the big government Republicans who also love spending, put their spending together on one bill, have a repeal bill. Both of them probably will pass. The spending bill passes with Democrat help. The repeal bill passes with only Republican votes.
Okay. But you realize in the big picture, if this does not pass and repeal does not pass, it is a vote for Obamacare. So you have to ask yourself,
I disagree
what is
with
better?
You. I disagree with your analysis. What I would say is there's greater danger to passing something that doesn't work. And we come to 2018 elections, and guess what? We still have the fundamental flaw of Obamacare. The death spiral continues. In fact, I think all of these plans allow the death spiral to continue. In the Republican plan, they subsidize the death spiral by giving money to insurance companies. In the president's plan, they force people to buy insurance. Neither one of them are going to work. The only thing that would really work is get rid of all the federal regulations, all of them, on insurance, and let states handle this and send it back to the people.
Well, there certainly are a lot of plans out there. Let's see what happens ultimately. It's, as you know, it's got to be better and it's got to be a lot cheaper. Meanwhile, Senator, the President of the United States, for folks who are opening up their New York Times this morning, he sat down with the New York Times reporters yesterday. Today marks his 6 months in office. He was looking back at things that he'd done. One of the things he regrets is, it sounds like, and we're going to play a little audio from that interview, it sounds like he regrets having asked Jeff Sessions to be his attorney general because he just turned around and recused himself because of the Russia deal. Listen to this.
Jeff Sessions takes the job, gets into the job, recuses himself, which frankly, I think is very unfair to the president. How do you take a job and then recuse yourself? If he would have recused himself before the job, I would have said, thanks, Jeff, but I can't, I'm not going to take you. It's extremely unfair, and that's a mild word, to the president.
You know, he's a businessman. He's looking back at the last 6 months, and he said that was a mistake. What do you think? Do you think it was a mistake for him to ask Jeff Sessions to be attorney general, knowing that most probably because there was a Russia investigation, he would have to recuse himself?
Well, I think the president has a point, because the thing is here is that if everybody's going to recuse themselves just for incidental contact, I think you don't get really good governance. I believe that Jeff Sessions' contact with Russians was incidental.
Handshakes.
In the usual duties of being a Senate, and in being incidental, he should have stayed in the fray, and he should have been more supportive of the president. But my other objection with Senator Sessions is that he also now is going after people's property through what we call asset forfeiture. And I'm a big believer that this has been disproportionately applied to minorities, and also poor people. And I think that we shouldn't take people's property without a conviction. And this is something I believe very strongly in and worked in. And I'm disappointed that Sessions is going now after a lot of poor minorities to take their property without due process.
Well, that's a policy which I assume that the president separates from his. The bottom line is he didn't disclose contact he had with Russians, and therefore he was brought back, and that's how he got to this spot. But I got to ask you to something else about that story with the New York Times, and that is Robert Mueller. And the president says I rejected Robert Mueller as the next FBI director. The next day he's a special counsel. I think there's some conflict of interest with his investigation, and he's upset that Robert Mueller may be looking into his business finances. Do you also feel as though the president has a reason to worry?
Well, I do think that there's a witch hunt, and this is a partisan thing. The Democrats lost the election, so they're going to investigate Trump for as long as he's in office. Now, to be fair, I think Republicans have done the same to Democrats, and so I think this is a partisan witch hunt. I also think that there's an observer bias to history. There was a historian, Herbert Butterfield, and he looked at it this way. He said, when you look back at history and you, as an observer, say, oh, it must be something to do with the Russians, everything you see, every meeting in your mind's eye, you connect it and say it's a big, grand conspiracy, when in reality it's a bunch of random events that we now are putting, or someone is putting their own impression on to say that it's a big conspiracy, when in reality a lot of people meet with Russian ambassadors, foreign ministers around Washington. And I think what we've done is concocted a storyline here that, frankly, just is a witch hunt.
Senator, really quickly, do you think if you're Jeff Sessions and your boss says that about you, do you step down?
You know, my objections really I'm not sort of personally involved with, you know, the appointment of special counsel and things like that. I'm more involved with policy, and I have been disappointed that Senator Sessions wants to take the property of people without a trial. Civil asset forfeiture is a big deal to me. It's very, very unfair. It's a big abuse of our system, and I've been trying to fix it, and I'm disappointed that he's going the opposite way. So I have my own beef to pick with Senator Sessions.
Well, today, Senator, today does mark the president's 6 months in office. I know he hasn't gotten a lot of help from Congress, but other than that, how's he done?
You know, I'm a glass half full guy. I think Gorsuch is a great pick for the Supreme Court. We put that through in record fashion. We repealed 14 regulations that were costing business about $60 billion in record fashion. So there's a lot good to be had. I think sometimes the media gets self-occupied with a story, the sort of, I think, made up in a way, Russian story. But we get so occupied with it that we forget the good things that are happening. And I think a lot of good things have happened so far. And I always compare it every day. I wake up and say, it could have been Hillary Clinton. We could be at war in the Middle East because Hillary Clinton wanted to go to war everywhere, and she would be at war with American business. It could be terrible. And I think Trump's doing a much better job than we would have gotten.
All right. Well, thank you for representing the great state of Kentucky. Todd Pyro, our own Todd Pyro, is in one of your diners. He is in Clay City.
Kathy's Country Kitchen.
Kathy's Country Kitchen. We love Kentucky. Thank you so much. Good to see you, Senator.
Thank you.
All right, straight ahead.